We are a constant duality of how we see ourselves and how others see us. Wow. Just take a second to really let that sink in. It's a pretty profound thought, right? And it comes straight from the raw, handwritten pages of a deeply personal journal. Today, we've got a seriously fascinating task ahead of us. We're taking this sprawling, chaotic, just incredibly intimate journal of human cognition. I'm talking pages totally filled with scribbles, crossouts, and wild diagrams, and we're going to organize it into a coherent psychological framework. The author of these notes was literally trying to map out the very fabric of human identity. So let's decode the chaos. To actually make sense of all these scattered thoughts, we're going to follow a five-part structure. We'll start with the minds behind the curtains, move on to the art of being self, then elementals and chaos theory, quantifying human variables, and finally, navigating the chaos path. All right, let's dive right into section 1, the mind behind the curtains, decoding the subconscious autopilot. Right off the bat, the journal introduces this fascinating concept they call the mind behind. It's essentially the subconscious system that automatically acts on repetition, totally without knowing right from wrong. It doesn't analyze morality, it doesn't use logic, it just reacts on pure, unadulterated autopilot. And by defining this, the author is really elevating their own personal reflections into a solid, structured theory. To prove this concept, the author points to the famous Moses illusion. Let's test it out. If I ask you, how many animals of each kind did Moses take on the ark, your mind behind might immediately shout 2. But obviously, it was Noah, right? Our mind just fills in the blanks based on what it expects rather than what's actually there. It adapts to what it assumes is coming. So the big question is, if the mind behind is just our blind autopilot, how on earth do we take the wheel? Which brings us to section 2, the art of being self, mastering conscious emotional intelligence. In this particular entry, the handwriting suddenly gets a lot more deliberate. The author explicitly defines emotional intelligence as the capability to manage, control, and tune into your true feelings as they're happening in real time. It's not just about reacting blindly anymore. It's about observing that reaction. To master the self, you have to actively watch the self. And the author breaks down the core elements of self-awareness into 4 really actionable steps. First, you have to actually be emotionally aware of your feelings. Second, recognize the effects those emotions have on yourself and the people around you. Third, maintain your self-confidence. And finally, possess assurance about your own capabilities and self-worth. You see, there is a highly structured thought process hiding right beneath all that messy ink. And that structure goes even deeper. Hidden right in the middle of these journals is a formal outline of the 7 principles of learning. Take a look at number 3 there, metacognition. That's the awareness of your own thought process. And that ties back perfectly into defeating that autopilot we talked about earlier. The author's literally pulling from formal pedagogy to teach themselves how to be a better human. But what happens when this internal mind actually collides with the external world? Let's look at section 3, elementals and chaos theory, the unchangeable rules of the universe. To navigate a totally chaotic world, the author argues that we absolutely need anchors. They call these anchors elementals. An elemental is defined as a fixed point in life that is constant and unchangeable. No matter how much chaos is swirling around you, a bad day, relationship drama, crazy work stress, these elementals serve as fundamental structural guides. They are basically the undeniable truths of your reality. So, what do these elementals actually look like in practice? Well, the author gives us this incredibly relatable and honestly pretty funny anecdote. In one entry, they talk about forgetting to put on deodorant. I mean, it seems silly, right? But basic hygiene is an elemental physical need. Forgetting this one basic, fixed point completely disrupted their entire day because they were just terrified of smelling that. The lesson here? If you ignore the fundamental structures of life, the chaos is going to overwhelm you, for sure. Moving on to section 4, quantifying human variables, turning life into data. Okay, this is where things get wild. Here, the author literally draws out these massive matrices, mapping human interactions with power levels, attributes, and color tiers like white, green, blue, purple. It's almost exactly like looking at a role-playing video game. It is just a massive, incredibly ambitious attempt to calculate human behavior. They are trying to find an actual algorithm for social interaction, attempting to turn the sheer unpredictability of human emotion into clean, predictable data points. When you isolate these algorithms, the depth is honestly staggering. Just look at the formulas for the blue and purple categories. They're tracking hit points, defense, attack,
They're applying literal game mechanics to real-life variables. It really shows a brilliant mind trying to find a mathematical formula for life itself, probably so they never have to be caught off guard by emotional chaos ever again.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, Navigating the Chaos Path, the grand synthesis of sense-making. It all boils down to the ultimate timeless duality laid bare right at the end of the journal: the brain versus the heart. On one side, you have this clinical, rigid logic, what the author calls the mind overpath. And on the other, you have the heart. Those are the chaotic, deeply personal, emotional variables that just refuse to fit neatly into those RPG spreadsheets we just saw. You simply cannot live purely by the algorithm, but you can't live purely in the chaos either. And that realization results in this absolutely incredible hand-drawn map. The author titles it the Overpath. Notice how the thick, straight line of the mind runs firmly all the way across the page, while the fragmented, branching arrows of the heart and life's chaotic events splinter off and just crash right into it. The mind and the heart are forced to run parallel through life's unpredictable timeline. The logic keeps you moving forward, but the chaos is where life actually happens. It's really just a beautiful visual representation of the human condition. So we've taken this sprawling journal and decoded into a framework of self-awareness, elementals, and this epic battle between algorithms and emotion. But the ultimate takeaway of this explainer is actually about you. How do you balance the rigid logic of your own path against the unpredictable chaos of your heart? Do you lean way too heavily on the autopilot, or do you let the chaos take over? Think about your own elementals, think about your mind behind, and where you go from here.